Hello everyone. So today we're going to cover up on a new topic called vector database. Before we start on a topic called vector database, first we need to understand what database is. So the database is basically a format where you add text, numbers, and if it given as date and time, right? So we just add those things in the database and which is in the form of relational database, right? These things to be added in relational databases, correct? Now let's discuss more of a vector database. A vector database is a different beast altogether. Why it's different? Because a vector database stores the data as sentences, text, audio, video, images, anything. So I can name it as unstructured data. And if you talk about your data, maybe I can name it, given example as images, audios, videos, etc. You cannot add those image, videos and unstructured data to the relational databases. So to understand and to add those images, we have to create a vector database where we stored unstructured data. Now let's understand how we can able to do it. Now unstructured data, we have 80% of unstructured data if we talk about the data that we received from internet. Internet data mostly contains PDFs, then images and maybe reports, which is also in the form of textual basis. So these are all unstructured data, right? So to understand the addition of data which is unstructured in the vector database, we have to perform it using vector embeddings. Now let's discuss about vector embeddings. Correct? Vector embedding is something that creates the numerical understanding of, it's basically the numerical understanding of your data. Now you are going to ask me the question that how I can have the numerical understanding of my data. So for that, let's discuss about embedding. Embedding is something, let's take the data as I will add up here a data called apple. Okay. So under your relational database, which is called a vector database, it creates a mapping of a word called apple. Let me create this. So this contains the data. So let's take as apple. So the embedding, the presentation of apple lies here. Let's talk about a word called banana. So it has a different embedding. Now how I'll present is as a numerical data. So this is all about a x-axis and this is y-axis, correct? So the embedding of apple, let's take an example as I'll write here that maybe a apple word has an embedding of 0.1, 2.9 minus 1.1 minus 0.33 plus 42. Okay, so this is called vector and this is added to the relational database. So now when you request or when you have a query to OpenAI, anything like chatgpt or claude or gemini, anything, when you ask for a word apple, it gives you the similar understanding of this particular vector, and this is how this is retrieved, okay, and get it back as an output to the user. Now let's discuss more about how the vector is created. So now let's discuss about a vector database. The vector database contains data. So the data that is in the form of text or anything, correct, that is considered as a vector data, correct? And the search that you search in the vector database is now having a similar data search based on distance. If I give you the example of apple before, there are two types of apple. When you ask OpenAI as apple, it can consider it as fruit all, and if you give them the detailed information about device also as phones. So there are different vector embedding created for that. So for fruit, maybe I can say that 0.1, 3.2, minus 4.2, minus 11. So for phone is 0.1, 3.7, minus 4.2, minus 11. Okay. So these are a similar vector generated. So based on that, when you search, the similar type of vector embedding comes together and give you the result. Okay. So this is how a vector embedding works in a vector database. Let's take as if I add an example here as Samsung. So the Samsung is basically created on the basis of like this, that device 1, then location 1, then stock 1, revenue 42, phones 1. The vector embedding of Samsung is 1, 1, 1, 42, 1. Now let's make it as same as for Apple. Apple as a device is 1, location 1, stock is 1, this is 37, and phone is also 1. So you can see that while having a search, AI will get you the result. So if you ask about the phones, then it will give us as Samsung and Apple, both under same embedding. So based on the similar search results, we can able to get it you in the vector databases. So they will check a relative bucket. So now what they do is that the Apple and Samsung are in the same bucket. So there is a bucket created. So this is considered as bucket 1. Okay. Now if I create another bucket which is for fruit. So if I query relatively, it will get me the result. So if I query to AI as apple as fruit, correct? So it goes to the bucket 1 and get me the result. If I query about the devices, then it goes to the bucket 2. So that is where it has a group of relational databases, and based on that, under the multi-dimension model, it get me the result. So if AI will going to store the data in the form of this numerical form, there should be very lesser space generated and more data is secure.